Your attention, please. And now, on with the show.
Witch, we're coming for you.
So first off, Sam, thank you so much for taking the time today. I saw the film last week. It was really, really well made. And it looks like it was a low budget, but you did a lot with that budget. I'm curious, how did this project originally come about?
I was working on a documentary I was editing about Christina Crawford, the adopted daughter of Joan Crawford. She was the Mommy Dearest, that movie. Christina's been out of the public spotlight for a really long time. A lot of it has to do with that movie, but a mutual friend of Camille Keaton, Jerry Rosenberg, hired me to do that. And at some point he knew I was a filmmaker and I'd made a few short films at that point, and he said, you have to meet a friend of mine. I think you guys should work together. And usually when people say that, it's like my nephew, who acted in high school or something like that. I didn't expect him to say Camille Keaton. Nice. But it turns out she lives down here in Florida, and her husband, Sidney Lutz, had died several years before, and she was starting to do, I think most people have probably seen her as small parts in low budget films or sort of cameos and bigger budgets, but nothing really, nothing significant, no leading roles.
Okay.
So my wife and I thought about it for a weekend, and we got a call. It was like 11 o'clock at night. I think it was the day after Christmas one year, and it was Jerry saying, hey, Camille's coming into town right now. Do you want to come over and pitch her anything? And so we're like, just get up, throw some clothes on, go over there and meet her. And she was really nice. And we pitched her sort of a modern day Western. That's the way we thought of it. We thought of it like High Noon kind of a thing. And she agreed to it, and she agreed to it for probably way less than what she's worth. But she was just eager to, I think, do something with a little more meat on it.
Okay.
And it took another 5 years to get money for it, but
nice.
We eventually got there. But that's it. There wasn't a single thing. It was just a chance meeting with Camille and discussing what she'd be interested in doing and what we'd be interested in doing, what we could do with limited resources here in Jacksonville.
What was it like working with Camille? She's such an icon.
Camille, it was easy. Camille is I think, gosh, how to answer that question? Camille, I had known her for a while. I felt like I knew her at that point. By the time we made the movie, I must have known her. I think it'd been about 5 years, 5 or 6 years at that point. And I had a chance to. I was a gaffer on a project she did. She had a small part in a friend's film. It wasn't a horror or genre film at all. It was just a coming of age movie where she played a mother. So I was on set with her that day, and I kind of got to watch how she works with her directors, what was working, what wasn't working, what she responds to. we had done a proof of concept trailer for Cry for the Bad Man when we were trying to raise money for it. So I had a chance to work with her then. And I'd get phone calls from her every, couple of weeks, just shooting the breeze. And sometimes Camille's a bit like, a bit like your mom, when she calls and she's like, "Hey, how do I put this thing on Facebook?" Like I get those kind of phone calls. And so when we finally got a chance to work together, it's funny, she had a very specific experience when she worked back in the 70s. She told me that when she worked on movies like What Have You Done to Solange, the director, the way that they thought of it is, you're a body. They'll put you in position, tell you where to look. They don't care how you say their lines because it's going to be dubbed in 4 languages anyway. I think one of the most iconic things she did in that film is she sort of chews on her finger over and over. And she said that the director grabbed her hand before a take and put her finger in her mouth. So it wasn't an acting choice. It was an extension of a lot of what she'd been doing as a model. So when it came time to do Cry for the Bad Man, this is someone who is, I think, for the first time thinking of it as a craft and thinking of she had been talking a lot about the Scorsese pack of Robert De Niro and figuring out how they get into character and starting on book and then venturing off into improvisation and things like that. So she was really excited to finally have a bunch, to see her name on almost every page and have a chance to do that. And oftentimes I felt like I was writing this character who was a little bit more, I guess, guarded in her reaction to what was going on. And so sometimes I think I'd underwrite certain moments. And then when we get there, Camille, she would say, she would have trouble saying a line or something like that. And she'd go, "I wouldn't say it that way." And it would always be, every time, she would be more forceful about it. I thought of her as like the stoic gunslinger who would say something like, "Get off my property,"
Right.
like a Clint Eastwood type.
Right.
Under the breath, it's all implied. There's no reason to go over the top. But I wasn't thinking of it from the perspective of a 7-year-old woman who just didn't have time for that. And so her version of it would be to shout and to throw F-bombs around and stuff like that. And it was fun. On set, she had this really spirited, excitability. And as a testament to how hard she worked, she actually, when we wrapped shooting, we had a cast party the next day, and then she was going to drive home. She lives down in South Florida. We filmed up in North Florida in Fruit Cove. And she didn't make the trip home. She got about halfway and she got really sick. It had taken such a toll on her. You wouldn't think about it, but she was being asked to, crouch and crawl around in the dark and sling guns around and get pushed around by guys half her age. And she actually stopped halfway on the way home and went and saw a doctor. And she didn't realize the whole time that she had been working, like her muscles were just sore, her joints were inflamed, and she got physically ill on the way back. So she really threw herself into it. And our primary concern was just, be safe, get home, don't overwork yourself. But I guess thank you for giving yourself to the project like that.
Wow.
So
that's dedication.
yeah.
And how do you feel about that? Sort of being responsible for that. No offense.
Oh yeah. It's interesting, when we did the proof of concept, we got to see a little bit of that. We filmed the proof of concept in about 2 hours. So it was lightning fast, and it was on the heels of this other project she did in town. So I asked the other filmmakers, "Hey, we're going to bring a little E&G kit out. Can we borrow the lenses that you rented? And we're going to borrow Camille, and we'll pay her per diem and we'll cover her travel and all that for your production if we can steal her for a couple of hours." And we got to see, just asking her to do certain things, like, "Okay, in this scene you have to go over here and crouch, and you're going to point this gun at a door," and that's it. And you do it 4 or 5 times, and you realize, oh right, a 7-year-old woman kneeling over and over again. You see the strain that it puts on her. So we tried to prepare for it. It actually helped because it was 2 years from the time we did the proof of concept when we did the film. So I actually had a chance to go back into the script, and now I'm thinking this could be something a little bit more suspenseful in the film, where you realize that this woman is not, like, it's not just, someone doesn't have to come in and club her over the head for it to be a threat. Just the wear and tear of going through the motions that the rest of us take for granted should be. I think there's a shot in the film after she has target practice where you see that she's got bruising on her arm just from the recoil. There's things like that we added, that we wanted to be that extra layer of suspense, but we tried to be as mindful about it when we were on set. A lot of the times where there's a scene where she's kneeling, anytime we punch in for a close-up, we would fly in an apple box that she could sit on, or make sure that she had moving blankets or sandbags or anything to cushion her knees. Anything that was out of frame, we were trying to accommodate so she could be comfortable and not worry about cramping up. So there's a gag in the film where when she's got the bad guy, the big baddie, pinned down, and she's holding the shotgun, and he's like, that's a real heavy gun. I don't think I could lift that. And then it's a joke that she picks up the revolver and sticks that in his face. But that joke came out of the rewrites of saying, I don't want Camille sitting there holding this giant shotgun the entire time.
Nice. Very thoughtful. So yeah, speaking about the rest of the cast, it's phenomenal. How did you piece together this wonderful ensemble?
Well, funny story. I don't think I've told anybody this yet. The dad in the film, Mark Palpton, he's a great actor. We worked with him. He's a theater actor. He's up there in New York, and he does a ton of theater. So he brings a kind of gravitas. And when I wrote that character, I wrote it for Michael Rooker.
Okay.
And we actually sent an offer to Michael Rooker. It had taken such a long time for us to our company become SAG signatory. We had to join the union, and our paperwork was taking forever. They had just merged with SAG-AFTRA, and SAG-Indy, the process used to be really simple, and it's a lot of stuff that you could do online, but they were beta testing with us a new online application process, and we got sent to we had a rep here in St. Augustine. We knew who it was from previous productions, but they told us to call the office in Chicago. So we called Chicago. And Chicago's like, you got the wrong number, you got to call New York. So we called New York, and we get on the phone with them, and then they tell us, no, talk to the guy in St. Augustine. Well, all right. So it had sandbagged us so long that by the time we finally sent a message to Rooker's people, we were just going to bring him in the first day of shooting. It was like a half day. We made a generous offer, and he would have been up in Georgia working on Walking Dead. So we figured it was reasonable to bring in one more character actor to round out the cast. Right. We didn't hear anything, and we had like a week away. So I reached out to Mark and said, "Can you come in and do this? I'll pay you the same I would have paid Michael Rooker." And he agreed to it, and he took like 3 flights to get here because it was so last minute. Usually it's a direct flight, Jacksonville to New York.
Yeah.
And turns out, once we started filming, we realized our producer, John Shepard, he realized that the offer letter to Rooker's agent had actually gotten stuck in the outbox, so it never actually made it to him.
Oh, no.
For a minute, you're like, well, we are a small film. I'm not going to take it personally if but we didn't get a response, and it just turns out that it was on our end. The rest of the cast, Scott, he auditioned. The main bad guy, Scott Peeler.
He's great.
He auditioned. When he came in, we immediately got like that David Hess kind of vibe. There were Camille thought he looked a lot like Chris Sarandon.
Yeah, I got that.
And my wife and I we were doing the casting at the time. This was years ago. This cast has been around for 5 years. We thought originally we were going to make this a long time ago. There was money on the table at one point, but that fell through. Scott came in and just scared us. Like, we didn't know him. He came in and he read the parts, and it seemed like he was in character. I couldn't tell. Like, the first read through, I thought he nailed it. But when you're doing an audition, you want to throw some direction out, if only to see how they interpret it, to see how it is to work with them.
Right.
I didn't have any real notes, but I was giving him notes to see what he would do. and it's almost like when I'd say something to him, he would just go, okay. Yeah, and it was just like, and
So he's totally in character, basically. All the
I wrote something down and slid it over to my wife. I'm like, this is the guy. The middle brother, Eric Dooley, he's a local guy. Like regionally, I see him in so much stuff. He's such a funny guy. He does a lot of comedy, and I
got a TJ Miller vibe from him.
Yeah, definitely. I see him, like, he does a lot of Ryan Reynolds kind of stuff. Like, he's just manic energy. I did want to say about Scott, not to diminish the experience for people seeing the film, but he could not be nicer or the opposite of his character in the film. He's one of the most compassionate people that I've ever met. Brilliant writer too. And then CJ, Christopher James Forrest, he plays the youngest brother. I actually used to work with CJ at a PBS station here. He was not an actor. He was a behind-the-scenes guy. He still is. He works on, like, Ice Road Truckers and Cake Wars and Halloween Wars. He still does a lot of editing work out in Los Angeles. But he got really serious about acting. He joined the union. He started getting gigs. And he kind of got too big for us. And he did us a big favor when we started the film because he was a member of SAG. They would want us to cover his travel to fly from Los Angeles back to Jacksonville. So what he did was he scheduled a vacation so he could come home and say, I'm already in Jacksonville, so he could report that to SAG. I'm going to work while I'm here. So he did us a huge favor. And also, CJ, he got violently ill before he left. I don't remember. He had food poisoning or something. They went to this restaurant. Everybody got food poisoning. He had to fly.
Jeez.
And because everything was so last minute, it wasn't usually LA. It's like you stop in Dallas or you stop in Atlanta. It's one connection. He had the most ridiculous flight. There was like 4 or 5 connecting flights to get home, and the entire time he's just vomiting.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. And then when he got here, we had to immediately send him to our makeup guy to do a life cast of his head. And I remember being in the room with the guy, and he's like, "We're going to put this alginate over your head, then we're going to put plaster bandages around it." And the whole time I'm thinking, please do not get sick while that thing's wrapped around your head. And then we're in the hospital after that. But it all worked out. The dude was a trooper. I'm such a baby. I wouldn't have made that trip, but TJ was great.
Great.
Everybody else is just, it was casting. It was open casting call. We Victor Jones, Karen Konzen, there's a couple other regional actors that we worked with on previous projects, and we just had a good rapport with them, and we sort of tailored the parts to their strengths. That was it.
Nice. Great. It worked out beautifully because all of you seem to like gel really well, and it just makes for a great cinematic experience. And also, speaking of the experience of the film, I want to talk briefly about the lighting. How did you achieve this wonderful effect? It's obvious it's nighttime, but still you can see like shades of flashes of nightlight from coming in through the windows. How did you achieve that wonderful effect?
What was a big chunk of the budget, what was important to us was that we not sacrifice any of our disciplines in production just because we had a small budget. Like, everybody got paid, we just knew that we'd have to make it up in time. So we shot the whole thing in 11 days.
Wow.
And there are days where you have to report hours too, so you can't go over 8 hours. So everything was meticulously storyboarded, and what we did was myself, one of the producers, John Shepard, cinematographer Pat Berry, we all do agency work, and we work for production houses locally. So we know all the vendors, and we've all worked on commercials. We've all worked on branding campaigns. We just reached out to those people and said, "Hey, you want to work on something creative? Like, we're not selling healthcare now. We're not explaining Medicare benefits this time. You want to go do this little suspense film?" And the gaffer on the film was Jay Kenyon, and he has a company here in town called High Contrast Lighting. So I was able to every day we had a 5-ton grip truck full of any lights we would possibly need. And Jay had worked with Patrick before on commercial projects, and we all got along, and we all spoke a language. It was really just efficient. We knew what we wanted because we had done this kind of thing on commercials. So all we did was just say, hey, sticks here, cameras go in there, it's nighttime, and then I can go focus on other things because I know Jay's going to set up the light and Pat's going to set the camera. And it was just a working relationship with people that I see them every other month on some other shoot. So
nice.
It was important to bring those people in, not cut corners, and not that you can't do it, but not just go to Home Depot and grab the little clip lights and do everything that way. Just spend the money, get the grip truck out there, make sure somebody can handle it.
So obviously collaboration is important to you.
Yeah.
I'm curious, who are some of your filmmaker influences?
On this one, well, I would say two things. On this one, we leaned a little bit heavier into like a Coen Brothers kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
We knew that we wanted it to, it's home invasion, which I think it's easier for people to think horror and think home invasion.
Mm-hmm.
But we borrowed the idea of the last man standing on the frontier town kind of a thing, but we put the 70-year-old woman in it. So we thought Western, and so we thought No Country for Old Men, but a little bit of dark humor in there. So we borrowed, I think, a little bit of the Coen Brothers aesthetic in how we presented it. Not exactly, it gets filtered through budget limitations and us, but as far as like sort of an approach to building a production family, my wife and I are huge fans of John Carpenter.
Nice.
That whole collective. I've got this photography book from Kim Gottlieb, who was the set photographer on a lot of his early films, from I think Assault on Precinct 13 through Christine, maybe.
Okay.
And there are all these great stories about Deborah Hill and how Deborah Hill would basically reach out to these people first. And when they were on Escape from New York, a lot of people that they went to film school with, they were all grips and gaffers and electrical workers, but they weren't in the union, and she was able to get them all into the union. And there's a story about someone twisting an ankle, and she spent Christmas Eve in the hospital with this woman who broke her ankle.
Wow.
And we started to think about, like, that's the kind of thing that we want. We want that film family where everybody feels like when you're on set, you're here to do a job and you're being paid to do a job. But really, I trust everybody that's there. I trust Pat. I trust Jay. That it's going to look great when they set it up. Our other makeup effects guy, Jay Howell, he was somebody that was obviously, we were leaning on him not just for some of the the blood and the gunshots and things, but he also was doing a lot of practical effects. Like there's a shot in the film where you're looking into a garbage disposal. He built that garbage disposal. I think it was like, I can't remember the scale he used, but what it actually is it's way bigger,
right,
than an actual garbage disposal. And even the here, you'll get a kick out of this.
Okay.
I've got this here. This is the bullet that was in
wow.
So you can see the scale.
That's funny.
We had the actual shells, and then this was the scale to which that whole garbage disposal was like this, so we could get that shock down inside.
Did you guys do a lot of that the gag type stuff, like with practical effects?
Yeah, one of the ones that was really so we did some pickup shots after we wrapped. Obviously, 11 days, we got as much as we could. That was it for budget. We felt like we were done, but one effect did not work. And without spoiling anything, obviously a head explodes in this film. We had a head that was, because our insurance was so low, we didn't have squibs, we didn't have any pyro or anything like that. We were filming indoors. We had no money to insure that. So everything was air pressure based. We would turn on a tank, build up the pressure, and if blood was going to come out of something, it was just because of this great pressure that was pushing it through tubes. Sure. Well, the idea was that you were going to see it come through the front of this face in this shot at camera. So we spent hours plastic wrapping, because we're in a location that's somebody's house.
Right.
So we're plastic wrapping everything that's not in frame. And then we pull up the pressure in this prosthetic head, and I'm sitting behind sheets with the camera operator that day, this guy Nick, and 3, 2, 1, we hear this release of air, and we don't see anything on our end, but the entire rest of the cast and crew that were off to the side, we all heard them, just freak out, like that was amazing. But what happened was, it was framed like this, and instead of the blood coming through here, somehow it came out through the top of the head. So all of the brains went to the ceiling.
God.
So we went in there, cleaned the whole thing up, rewrapped it, stuck the head back together, scored it more, shot it one more time, same thing happened. Just didn't get it, had to move on, like we've got other things to shoot.
Right.
So Jay, I called him up after I realized that the effect wasn't working in the edit, and I said, hey man, you remember what they did in Scanners whenever the head wouldn't explode? We're going to go do that.
Nice.
So our executive producer, who's the external house in Fruit Cove, the exterior of that house, that's her actual home, Catherine McAvoy. She's out in the middle of nowhere. So we took the head, put it on a stick at night, lit it, put it against a false wall, and matched the lighting of the room that we were in. And Jay literally took a 12-gauge shotgun. We overcranked the camera, turned everything on. Everybody walked back behind him. Jay went out there, and he actually just blew that head apart with a shotgun. So what you see is what a shotgun does to a head.
Oh, God. That is quite a story. I love the behind-the-scenes anecdotes. So last question, Sam, before I let you go. What do you hope audiences take away from Cry for the Bad Man?
I hope that, for people who are fans of Camille Keaton, that they get to see a little bit more from her. Obviously she's most known for I Spit on Your Grave, and it's a character that is reacting to something that happens to her. And what we wanted to do with this film was to give her a little bit more dimension, I guess. We wanted to see someone where there's an implied background that is perhaps criminal, and that this is someone who is underestimated. And I think she's got moments in the film where she becomes emotional, or where she seems to be in her head, or there's more going on than just being the victim or being the avenger. We wanted her to have a little bit more to chew on. So I hope people that see it can appreciate. I think for a woman her age, I don't think there's a lot of roles like that for her. Honestly, I just hope people are entertained by it. We tried to make it fun, as serious as it gets. The thing that we thought would be amusing about it is if, for maybe a third of the film, you're concerned for what danger this poses to this woman and to her family, and then at some point to flip it and to show that there are these three guys. I'm not exactly a Three Stooges kind of thing, but kind of like, if you or I got hurt trying to break into someone's house, we might go, that's enough, let's get out of here.
Yeah.
But these guys are more like, it's like kicking a hornet's nest. Like each time that something bad happens, it just strengthens their resolve, and they make more and more mistakes.
It almost has like a Home Alone vibe if you think about it.
Yeah. So I just hope that it's entertaining. Like at the end of the day, that's the point. The scares aren't scares after the first time, so there has to be an additional reason to come back and watch it. So hopefully it's fun, and hopefully she's got some good little one-liners in there, and the other guys are entertaining enough in there, whether they're being threatening or whether they're being completely incompetent. Hopefully there's something entertaining about it.
Nice. So how can people see the film?
I actually am the last person to know.
Okay.
My understanding right now is it'll be out on May 5th, and it'll be streaming. I've been told it'll be on DVD. I've seen proofs for the DVD packaging. I just haven't been told where yet. Okay. I assume there's going to be another press release to follow, but I've been told Let's see, Google Play, Amazon, iTunes. There's a couple of that's in US and in Canada. There's a couple other aggregators that send it to like cable networks, but yeah, I wish I could give you a more concrete answer. Internationally, it's a different story. I think Japan's showing it theatrically, Germany's showing it theatrically. Scandinavia, Belgium, Luxembourg, Norway. I think they're all showing it on television.
Okay.
But I haven't been given specifics yet, so I just know May 5th. It should be easy to find streaming.
Okay. Sweet. Well, Sam, I want to thank you so much for your time today. This was awesome. Wish you all the best with the film. I can't recommend it enough. It's just fun, and the practical effects is what won me over, actually.
Oh, thanks. I'll let Jay know.
Yeah, for sure. And I hope you get to work with Michael Rooker in the future.
We'll see.
Cool. All right, well, I'm your host, Randy Unger. This has been Under the Radar. Thanks so much for watching.